Daryl's online. Oh, there he is.
I am here, ready to call this meeting to order. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. And I don't know if we have any guests today. I'd like to welcome everybody to a bright sunny day, and we'll have a good time today. And if everybody could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, I'm sorry, before I do that, I need the inspiration. Who is doing the inspiration today?
Good morning, Gerald. Good morning, everyone. Here are the 7 rules of life. Number 1, let it go. Never ruin a good day by thinking about a bad yesterday. Number 2, ignore them. Don't listen to negative people. Live a life that's empowering to you. Number 3, give it time. Time heals everything. Number 4, don't compare. The only person you should try to beat is the person you were yesterday. Number 5, stay calm. It's okay not to have everything figured out. Know that in time, you'll get there. Number 6, it's on you. Only you are in charge of your happiness. And finally, number 7, smile. Life is short. Enjoy it while you have it. Amen.
Thank you, Joe. Great words of inspiration to start us off today. Now we can do the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand, those in the room and those on Zoom. Started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm happy to say we had a volunteer Toastmaster today, Nancy Ferry. She stepped up to the call and is, in general, I think, a very positive person. So let's continue this positive role theme that Joe started us off with today. Nancy, it's like turning the meeting over to you. Are you there? There she is.
Are you there? You can see names up across the screen, but you can't. So kind of an awkward position. Welcome, fellow Toastmasters. I don't see any guests. Glad that you're here today. And the summer always makes me a little nostalgic, thinking of hopscotch and jump rope and hula hoops, being outdoors. So I picked a theme, remembering when things were simple. Sometimes they were simple. I think a lot of thinking back with simplicity was about nostalgia, remembering the fun things. I can remember going to my grandmother's house. We would go once or twice a year. She lived in New Hampshire. She lived in a little mill town, one grocery store sort of, had other things, a library, a grange, a church. That was it. And a mill, a paper mill, made toilet paper, which doesn't smell very pleasant when it's running. We would go, she would ask us to go to the store for her. We thought we were big kids, and we'd walk all the way downtown, which was maybe a quarter of a mile. And she would say, now get 6 hot dogs, a can of something, vegetables, and some hot dog rolls. And then if you're really good, you can, if you do it right, you can get yourself a bag of penny candy and then just charge it. So we would go down and go to the grocer, and he would say, oh yeah, you're Martha's grandkids. Here's your bag. We didn't even get to say it. We just got the bag because she would call and let them know that we were coming. It was so simple. It seemed simple. Living in a mill town, I don't imagine was that simple in a lot of ways. I'll bring back some other stories about that little mill town that we would visit that were not quite so simple and easy as it was to go to the grocery store and just say, oh, charge it to Grandma Martha. I would like to ask for Carol Ann Well, you're right standing up. I knew that you would walk in the door as soon as I was ready for you. You're just an amazing person. And I know that you have an amazing word for us today.
Come up and say it.
Well, you can come up and say it. And if you'd like, I will transcribe it. Carol Ann Halstead.
My word is reminisce. Yeah, and it's, I thought it'd be appropriate today. I think we're remembering things that were simple. And a definition is the enjoyable recollection of past events. His story made me smile and reminiscence, it's difficult to say, a collection in literary form of incidents and experiences that someone remembers. And I would highly recommend, especially for baby boomers, the magazine Reminisce, to bring back all those childhood memories of Christmases and Easters where everybody got all dressed up. A reminder, table topics must use it.
Thank you, Carol Ann. And now I have green hands. Our master today was Chris DeGlover. Are you online? I don't see Chris. Okay. Jackie Kinney, you are grammarian. Would you also add ahs and ums to your role today? Shake your hand because I don't want you to be green
Thank you,
too.
Madam Toastmaster. The job of the grammarian is to listen carefully for both elegant and egregious uses of the English language. I will make notes. I've already started. So you'll hear from me at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. We can't have a meeting without a quote. Well, I'm going to invite Gerald Stevens, who volunteered to do that for us today. Gerald, do you have a quote for us?
I sure do, Nancy. Not only do I have a quote, I have a whole book of quotes, positive quotations. I was inspired to get this book from Dave Licata. Got to give him kudos as necessary for sure. I have 3. I wanted a perfect ending. Now I've learned the hard way that some poems don't rhyme. Some stories don't have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Life is about not knowing, having to change, taking the moment, and making the best of it without knowing what's going to happen next. Gilda Radner. A few other quotes I have. Life is uncertain. Eat dessert first. Ernest Olma. I've done that for a very long time before I saw this quote, so there are like minds out there. The longing for certainty is in every human mind, but certainty is generally an illusion. Oliver Wendell Holmes. Have a positive day, Toastmasters. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Gerald. And speaking of Dave Licata, Dave is a very funny man, and I know that he has a great sense of humor and is going to share that with us today as the Jester Master.
Well, you brought up penny candy, and that caused me to reminisce. And the beauty part is that my cousin and I, who are only 5 months apart, he's a little older than me. But when we went to Hannigan's store at the corner of Allen Street and Monroe, he would spend, I don't know, hour and a half picking out penny candy. He'd come out with a big bag, and I had no patience at all. So Snickers were a nickel, and that's it. Bada bing, bang, that's it. But to reminisce even further, back when things were simpler, I have been a dad now for 36, getting real close to 37 years. So I don't know where else to do this, but trust my best friends in Toastmasters and tell my first dad joke. Some people eat snails. They must not like fast food. Madam Toastmaster. That's one for Eric.
It's important that we keep time in our meetings, that we don't run over, we don't start late. Our time is precious and valuable, and we have asked Jen Zeppla to be our timer this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I will be your timer today. And what does that mean? It means I will be keeping track of how long it takes you for speeches, for evaluations, and also for table topics today. Timing is very important, as Nancy mentioned, because we have a finite amount of it. So we want to make sure that something takes us a minimum amount of time and a maximum amount of time. And if you're anything like me, you have a tendency to overestimate or underestimate how much time something will take. So hopefully this will give you good practice in life as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And that's what Toastmasters is all about, to give us a little bit of extra boost in skills, speaking, but also boundaries. And time is certainly a boundary. I do have an opening for Jester Master. Unless Larry is online, I did not see him. Is there someone who would like to watch for our jesters and see how we do with tech? You want to come up and tell us? Beth, thanks.
I will be your tech and gesture master this morning. I will be watching for proper gestures and how well it goes along with your speech or talk, whatever you're doing, and also tech, which most of the time we don't have any control over. It just will decide not to work. That's how it works in my house. So thank you, Madam Toastmaster.
That's what I love about Toastmasters too, is that people step up, jump in, send out a note, and everybody jumps in and fills most of the slots, and we don't fill them online, fill them right here. So thank you so much for stepping up. Mike Florio, I believe I saw you online. Would you tell us your role today as Quizmaster?
Sure, Madam Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters, good morning. I will be listening throughout the meeting and gathering questions so that we can reminisce over the meeting with questions at the end of the meeting. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you most kindly. Gloria. Sometimes I forget to ask our general evaluator to tell us about that role. And today we have Marty Johnston, who is going to be our general evaluator. Marty?
Morning, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, present and on Zoom. As general evaluator today, my duty is to evaluate the Toastmaster and the evaluators. and I will reminisce about that experience at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Part two of that little mill town in New Hampshire was before my Grammy had running water. We had a two-holer out in the woodshed. And she had a pump in the sink. And we just thought that was so cool because we only went to visit. And she had this huge claw tub, bathtub. And the three of us would take a bath in it all at the same time. She would bring up a kettle of water, 2 kettles of water, and that was it, the 2 kettles of water, and we were supposed to get clean in that. The other thing that was kind of sad, I thought it was cool at the time, but all the garbage, trash, everything just went into the river. There was no trash or recycling. You just fling it into the river and whatever happens to it, happens to it. Fortunately, a lot of it was compostable, little ends of hot dogs and things that probably turtles and fish ate, but there was a lot of stuff that shouldn't have been in there as well. Our next role is with Mark Campos as Table Topics Master. Would you please explain your role to us?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. Good morning. My job as Table Topics Master is to test your ability to speak extemporaneously. I would ask, can you help a guy out here and just give me the list of everyone that's in the room? Because I just lost one of my Table Topics targets.
You have that list, Carol? Are you over there? I can tell you that Eric and Kate do not have roles. Those are the only 2 that I see right now.
All right. I'll wing it. In any event, I really like your theme, Madam Toastmaster. You mentioned the word nostalgia, and that's a phenomenon that I've become more aware of, especially as I get older. And I've actually thought about doing a meeting theme on that topic. So I really like this idea where we somehow start to reminisce more and more the older we get. And I find that it's not always a significant moment. You might remember a time, a place, an event, a person, but maybe not even a pivotal moment. So I'd like to ask my first contestant this morning, Steve Smith, what do you miss from the past? It can be anything, a time, a place, a person. Steve Smith.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. Not sure where I'm going with this. Because when I reminisce, I don't have to go very far. Because I'm still living in the house that I grew up in. It was an odd journey. Because I bought the house next door to where I grew up when it went for sale. Then when my parents died, I wound up owning both properties. Now, this is a good thing. We have a big lot down there. It's, oh, what's the check out? About 160 by roughly 700 feet. And with both of our gardening interests, it keeps us very, very busy. So this is a good thing. So talking about reminiscing, I still do the same things that I did 50 years ago. Still planting a garden. Still like to go out back. A few things have changed though. I keep pointing out to Jill the back end that we've now sort of let grow into a nature preserve. We used to keep that all mowed off when my brother was alive when we were kids. We had a ball field back there. We kind of talked Dad out of plowing the whole back end up and we turned it into a ball field. And Ma loved that because she said she knew where we were and what we were doing. Which is another fun thing I'd like to reminisce about. My brother was always getting into trouble because he was dumb enough to get caught. I didn't. And when something did happen, she blamed him because she didn't think I was capable of it. My brother hated that. I said, well, you got caught. It was fun growing up down there in the typical small town. Knew everybody. Downside of that was when you were out doing something, so did your parents know about it before you got home. And don't bother lying about it, because one thing Ma hated was a liar. So you might as well own up to it and face the music. My brother never learned that. He always tried to lie his way out of it. That just made things worse. I used that philosophy when I was working. Oh, I see I have a red light, so I can shut up now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. So from a quality of life perspective, and nothing more than that, just quality of life, I think we'd like to believe that we're making progress over time. I think certainly technology is a blessing and a curse at the same time. But I think of my family members. For example, my mother-in-law used to always reminisce about the past and was just totally convinced that it was just always so much better then. And I'm not so sure it's that way, nor do I think progress is so clear. I think it's very uneven. So I'd like to ask our next contestant, Len, are you in the room? Len Thornton, are we better off or are we worse off? Len.
Thank you, Mr. Topic Master, fellow Toastmasters. There is no doubt in my mind that we are worse off. As I reminisce about the old days when you could dial somebody's phone number, call them, and they would answer the phone cheerfully. Or if they weren't available and you left a voicemail, that person would return your call. That's a foreign concept today, particularly with the younger generations. This month, I am tasked with putting together my all-star football game, and I have to be in regular contact with 17 and 18-year-olds who not only don't return voicemails or accept phone calls, they don't return texts or emails. And we have all this technology, all these avenues for connecting with people, but it still comes down to human nature. If people aren't going to bother, they're not going to bother in any medium. So in that respect, we're worse off. I could go into social media and all the perils that has brought upon us, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, and the politics, foreign influence. We're all aware of that. There are some good things, though. I went to my high school reunion recently, and some of my classmates from 1980 I stay in contact with. Others I only see once a year, or if they come out for one of the big reunions, generally held at a fireman's picnic right near our high school. And that was fun. We had about 35 people out of a class of 700. Some came as far away as Denver. And it was good to reminisce. And for the most part, my class is doing pretty well. And so that was good to see. Mr. Topmaster.
Thank you, Len. Speaking for myself, I was born in 1968, which means that the 80s were in my wheelhouse, 12 to 22, a great decade. So it's my favorite decade. I'd like to ask our third and final contestant, Phil Russell. Phil, are you still out there? Oh, I see 2 Phil Russells. I see one with a camera now, one without. Phil, I mean this in the most respectful way possible. I believe you've got a few decades under your belt. Which is your favorite decade, Phil?
Just a minute. Hold your horses. You talk about it being simpler. I reminisce. It was not simpler. The 50s. You'd get up, you'd have breakfast. You wouldn't go home until you were hungry. Now we going to the canal swimming, we going to the Star Hole swimming. We going over Bellinger's Hill and build a fort. We got to find out whether we playing baseball, football, basketball. What's going on? We got to meet at the Hannigan store, go up by the light, pitch some pennies for a while. This is some complicated stuff. You have to understand. You know, when you talk about communication, you go up, you say, Peter, Polly, hey, Larry, Tommy, where are you guys? You go running around. We got to play Bluebird tonight? What are we doing? This is complicated stuff. You have to find out. And, I mean, it was crazy. Are we going down by the tracks? We're going to take a big hike. We're going down to Comfort Hill. Where are we going? We're going to go through the cemetery? Are we going to go down by the railroad tracks over to the gulch? Where are we going? Come on, you guys. Let's figure it out. Let's figure it out quick. Life was not simpler then. Today, you have somebody planning it for you. It's so simple. People are telling you have to go here, you have to go there. You have a little telephone. It's got your schedule on it. You got to do this, you got to do that. Boy, I'll tell you what, it was complicated in those days to figure out what you're going to be doing. Oh, you have to figure it out. I don't know about you people. You think times were simple then? Not for us. We had too many kids and too many things to do. Mr. Topics Master.
Thank you, Phil. Jen, can we have a timers report, please?
Hello, Mark. Yes, we certainly can. We had Steve Smith at 2:09, Len Thornton at exactly 2 minutes, and Phil Russell at 2:03. So all of our table topics contestants qualified for timing with the buffer. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And our word master, Carol, how did Reminisce do during table topics?
I would like to report that everyone used the word. In fact, Steve, I counted 3 times, and Len twice, and Phil used it the required 1 time, so they all qualified.
Thank you, Carol. So there you have it, fellow Toastmasters. Please cast your vote for Steve, Len, or Phil. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. 3 great, ready to go table topics. And thank you, Mark. Great job. Great questions. Reminiscing is a challenge sometimes. I think sometimes the facts get squiggled around in your head when you're reminiscing. When I'm reminiscing, a little bit more nostalgia and good feelings around a lot of things, and a lot more anger over things that I wasn't so angry about. So I wonder if that reminiscing is always factual. I do remember a lot of fun times growing up in a flood zone. Not at my grandmother's house, but in our own home. We had floods. We had great times when it would flood and it would freeze. We would skate. When it was summertime, we'd hop in the rowboat and just go along and do what we wanted to do. And then there were other times when the back door of the house would just blow off. I mean, not blow off, be taken off the hinges with water, and the house would start filling with water. It was one time we had one of those occasions and we all jumped in the rowboat, and my mother, before we left, she grabbed a frozen turkey. Like, Mom, if we're gonna die, we're headed for what? You got a turkey. What were you thinking? There are pictures, there's the animals, there are all these things that we could have taken with us, and you took a turkey. She said, well, if I'm going to impose on anybody, I'm going to bring some food. But I don't know what made me think of that. I was thinking of also pictures And I think it's so much nicer to be able to take a picture on your phone and see it and save it than back in the day when we had the cameras and we'd wait until the film ran out and then we'd take it up to the pharmacy and we'd wait 2 weeks and then you get back a bunch of dumb pictures that nobody knew what they were. They were just somebody's half ahead. At least when we have a camera now, we can see what we're taking a picture of and delete it and try again. Or we may miss the opportunity, but at least we weren't paying all that money for things that nobody could identify. One of the unidentifiable objects was when my parents moved out of this flood zone. We had all left, but they decided that they needed to stay there. One day my mother said, "I'd love to move out of here, but your father loves this place." And I talked to my father and he goes, "I'd love to move out of here, but your mother loves this place." I said, there's this word, it's called communication. Maybe you could talk to each other. But anyway, when they were moving out, they sent up this huge box of old rolls of film to the pharmacy to see what they were. And my mother called me up one day and she said, "Nancy, I need you to identify a couple of things." I said, "Okay." A lot of just dumb things, but there was this one. She says, "No matter how I hold this, I can't figure out what it is." I said, "Oh, that was Gigi. That was the gerbil's funeral." And she said, "What?" We had taken an Entenmann's box and lined it with velvet, blue velvet, I still remember, and we put the little gerbil in there and we had calling hours for our neighbors and I played taps on my clarinet and my friends came over and paid their respects. And it was there was this thing that was scribbled out. I don't have very good handwriting and it said, "Here lies Gigi," but my mother couldn't read that and she just kept on turning this thing around and it was funny. Okay, that's a good segue into our speaking portion of the meeting. Our first speaker will be Les Robinson, and his evaluator is David Jones. David Jones, will you please tell us about Les's speech and introduce him? Thank you, David Jones.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, and good morning, fellow Toastmasters and guests. When I looked at Les's speech today, I had to reminisce because I've been, like so many of you, through so many pathways, and he's on the innovative planning, level 2, understanding your communication style. And Madam Toastmaster, do you have his, oh, you're gone, so I'll go ahead and unless you want to introduce him. Do you have his title?
I have understanding the communication style.
Yes. So understanding your communication style, Les Robinson. It's 5 to 7 minutes, Madam Toast timer.
Understanding your communication styles. This is very important if you want to communicate with people and understand different things. But basically, when I did this manual, they broke it into 4 areas. You've got your direct, your initiation, your support, and your analytical. And I've been in Toastmasters, I believe, for 15 years. And I started the speech and I realized I could have done it in about 45 seconds. And well, I'd be over in about another 20 seconds. But then my evaluator would have to come up with 2 minutes of a 45-second speech. So what I did is I did a little more research on this. And you've got your direct and real simple. That's telling people what they need to do, how to get them there, get started. Initiating is being social, getting everybody motivated, going together. Supportive is when someone passes away. And analytical are engineers talking to accountants, which I could explain that if that was them for 5 hours. But what I found out, all 4 of these styles tend to mix together in day-to-day life, unless you are telling people to do stuff, you're being supportive, analytical. And I kept thinking about this and how to do this. And it says, how many people here remember Animal House when they had lost, the dean had come in and they had lost their charter. And I dug out the old videos. I have very few videos, but I do have the Animal House video. I don't have the DVD, and that is going back to the 80s and reminiscing. But the funny thing was, which was really neat, was when Pluto, I can't remember her name actually, was doing the direct speech. He was being supportive. He was initiating. He was being analytical. Everything was wrong in the speech, but he was doing all four parts together. And then he got everybody motivated, and they ran out and they attacked the parade. But that's what I found out was, once again, these four items are used day to day. Then I went up and I talked to my wife, and we reminisced about a time when I have 3 stepdaughters, and I told them they couldn't do this, and they all agreed, and they all went in the room, and 10 minutes later, they were back outside on the other side of the property doing something else. And I said, well, you said we couldn't do this, but we're doing that. And one thing I learned is that you have to be direct, you have to be supportive, you have to be analytical, initiative. And basically what I did was told them, you can't do this. We're here for you. We care about you. And analytical was anything under the sun. And after that, basically my wife kind of laughed. She goes, yeah, you got to give the blanket approach. I said, I do. But once again, more and more every day, these four communication styles are, I would believe, integrated into day-to-day dealing with people, society, unless you're dealing with certain events. But the one you probably least used is the analytical, unless you're talking to accountants, CPAs, because they love to spend 5 hours on 30 seconds. But that's the great thing about communication styles, is that this manual made me review something that I probably haven't looked at in a very long time, which actually made me take a look at the rebalancing of my entire way of doing my presentations, my speeches, because right now I'm working on a new PowerPoint. And basically, this is what I found out was certain things in here you need to be direct when you speak to people. You have to show supportive. You have to initiate, but you have to hold back on the analytical approach when you do a presentation, because if you spend too long on one part, you drill down and you kind of lose the whole entire presentation theme of what you want to get across. So when you work all four communication styles, which they're integrated into one, you have to make sure you do it nice, balance, and you don't overemphasize on one area. Once again, analytical, after doing review and working on this speech, seems to be the area where you can really derail your personal life, your work life, friends, whatever, because you spend too long talking. And then if you integrate people that are in for instantaneously, after the third word of your talking, you have lost your ability to deal with them. But once again, it's a rebalancing, so you have everything go very extremely well. And one other thing I do remember many years ago is when you're direct, there's a good way of being direct. And one thing about that is, and I would say this is Toastmasters taught me, that was the sandwich approach, where you give good, give them a little bad, and you give them good. And that being directive works more appropriate and more effectively than pointing the finger and saying, doing that. And that was one of the best things I have ever learned at Toastmasters, how to deal with people. And I think reviewing this communication style is a win-win across the board. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Les. And I'm looking up here at the wrong camera. Thank you very much, Les. It's so hard for me to get used to looking at the right place. I'm working on it. Our next speaker will be Nancy Rose, and introducing her as her evaluator will be Jill Roaring.
Good morning, everybody. Nancy is starting the dynamic leadership path, and this is her 4 to 6 minute
icebreaker speech. I think we've got to know her a little bit in these past couple months. But maybe we will learn a little bit more as she does some reminiscing with her title, Lifelong Lessons Learned from Childhood. Nancy Rose, Lifelong Lessons Learned from Childhood.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, I want to reminisce and share an important lesson I learned from my childhood. Framed by my family to have an attitude to strive for a happy and meaningful life. There's so many categories in life that are important to my happiness. For example, nature, children, animals, my career, education, and family. If I have to pick one category that's very important to me, it would be family. Through my family, I've learned so many lessons that are so important to me in order to persevere. Through my family, I learned so many silly lessons that came to be so important. It's where I learned rules of how to be loving, grateful, respectful, and understanding, not only with others, but with myself. I was born into a large family of 13 in Buffalo. I was the 10th child out of 11. My mom and dad made 13. Family dinners were very important to my family. We had 14 chairs at our table, always one extra for any guest that wanted to join us. My parents filled our plates with food to nourish our bodies and conversations to nourish our minds. This was a place where we practiced our manners. We had 5 very important rules that helped us to use our manners. The same rules my parents set at the table were the same rules that we were to use when we left the table. The 5 rules were: be loving, be appreciative, be respectful, and be understanding. However, there was one rule that was very confusing, and it was, if you didn't have anything nice to say, don't say it. At dinner, I shared my confusion with my family about the rule. I remember my sister, who was 14 years older than me, saying, Nancy has a problem with a friend, and I think she should tell everybody. And I thought to myself, no way. Problems aren't nice, and if you don't have anything nice to say, I wasn't going to be the one getting in trouble that night. All of a sudden, the table got very loud. My brothers and sisters started shouting and screaming, that's not what it means. You can talk about problems. And I said, why? And my sister said, because problems are supposed to be there to fix. And then all these examples started coming out. They started telling me and shouting all the different ways that you can do that. There had to be 20 different examples, but out of all the examples, it seemed to boil down to only one that made sense. It was a positive attitude. It meant a positive attitude could get me to reach my goals through any problems along the way. I carried that example throughout my life. But as I grew, I found myself still being a little confused in how to keep a positive attitude. Why? Because the world's a tough place and problems will always arise. However, with practice, I eventually figured out how to keep a positive attitude through my problems. I learned through time that it was the kind of attitude that I had that made the biggest difference in the outcome. A negative attitude makes me feel weaker and pulls me back from success. A positive attitude makes me feel stronger and pulls me toward success. A positive attitude reminds me to approach my solutions in a manner that is loving, grateful, appreciative, and understanding. Yes, the same manner that I use with my problems to come up with positive solutions were the same rules that my family set at the family table. These lifelong lessons help me to reach my goals and to keep me happy and successful in any important categories of my life. Thank you, and back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
One thing I was remiss in doing, not to be confused with our word of the day, reminisce, I did not introduce the people that are in the room to the people on Zoom. We have in the room Jen Zappla, Dave Licata, Jackie Kinney, Beth Banks, Carolyn Halstead, Nancy Rose, Mike Licata, Joe Budnak, Tracy Farrell, Len Thornton, Margot Bittner, Steve Smith, Jill Roaring, and Marty Johnston. I was trying to remember your last name, whether it was Johnson or Johnston, and I'm remembering it's Johnston.
You don't have to call it
And myself. So our third speaker is Margot Sue Bittner, and evaluating her and introducing her is Tracy Farrell. Please welcome Tracy.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Today, Margot's going to give us a speech from the Presentation Mastery Manual. It's the third level. It's an elective and how to inspire your audience. The purpose of this is to practice writing and delivering an inspiring speech. Do you have her title? I have. Yeah. So this should be a really interesting speech. Standing on your baggage. Margot Sue Bittner, standing on her baggage. Her and I are both height challenged, so we'll hear more about this.
Good morning, everyone. Standing on your baggage. Let's go back to 1988. Who remembers when we used to make our long distance phone calls after 5 o'clock because the rates went down? Okay, not just me. Wonderful. So let's reminisce. 5 o'clock, the phone rang. It was my girlfriend, and we're talking about this upcoming conference. It's very important to her that I get this information. All of a sudden, I looked up at the clock and I said, heavens to Betsy, sorry, that was her name, that I have to leave for my local meeting in about 45 minutes. I haven't eaten, I haven't changed, I've got to get going. She would not let me get off the phone. She had to tell me one more thing. I get off the phone and I call my children into dinner. At this point, they are 3, 5, and 7. We sit down at the table. I wolf down my own meal. I say, okay, guys, mom has to change. Finish eating and put your plates in the dishwasher. And I left the room. Brave woman. I get upstairs and the phone rings. It's one of my husband's employees. He needs to talk to Jim. Jim is picking pears. He called me back to work. Oh my gosh, I got to go to work. Well, no, Jim will be home in a few minutes to be with his children. So why don't you just call back? No, I'll go over to the orchard. By the time you get there, he won't be there. So this guy starts going off on me. And I said, look, I have to leave, make your decision and go with it. I got dressed. The first dress I put on, the hem was completely down. Changed my clothes. All of a sudden, there's this yelling and screaming from downstairs. I go flying down and discover one of my children sitting in the middle of the kitchen table, throwing food at the other ones. As I try to figure, Beth knows which child it was. As I'm trying to figure out what to do, my daughter says, Mommy, what's that white thing? My slip. Yeah, I used to wear them. Back upstairs, change again, back downstairs, and the phone rings. My mother-in-law, she wants to chat. Mom, I'd love to talk, but I have a meeting to go to. I need to finish getting ready. She said, well, who's watching the children? I said, Jim's watching the children. She goes, but Jim's picking pears. I said, I know Jim's picking pears. Jim's been picking pears and cherries and peaches every night for the last 2 months. He can come home early one night. Dad'll feed the horses and we'll come over. Great. I get off the phone. I go in the bathroom, pull out my makeup. Yes, I used to wear that too. And start fixing my hair. The 3 kids pile in the bathroom, fighting over something else. Finish my hair, kick them out, reach into the closet, and they pile back in fighting about something else. And as I talk to them, I reach into the closet and promptly spray Dow bathroom cleaner all over my freshly permed hair. I kind of yelled a little bit, and at that moment, who saunters in but my husband? Hi, anything going on? So as I try to explain what's going on, he says, leave. My children, trying to make amends, are cleaning the kitchen. They're dropping more food than they were cleaning up. We had a dog. I pulled out of the driveway and realized I never did finish my hair or put on my makeup. Oh well. I got halfway to my meeting and I suddenly realized I hadn't heard from my co-leader. I had no idea if her children were still sick or if I had to lead the meeting that night. Okay, I figured I'll wing it. Now that last thing my friend Betsy told me, because I was the most organized person she knew, she had just volunteered me to speak on that topic at an upcoming international conference. And that night I wasn't. So being organized is one of the labels with which I live. And I always stayed in the background. I'm the organized one. I'll set it up so the real leaders can give the speeches, can conduct the meeting, can do the project. And then one day my girlfriend said to me, don't you know what public speaking is? I said, no, what's public speaking? It's organizing your thoughts so you can present them. What? I can be organized. It opened up a whole new world for me. And so now being organized, instead of being something I hid behind, became the first piece of baggage I stood on. But it got me thinking, what kind of baggage do each of you have? What labels have you been given over the course of your life that maybe have held you back? I actually went to a thesaurus and looked at some of the labels my parents, my teachers, my friends had given me, some I had given myself, and found instead of the negative term, a positive term to use. And all of a sudden, the world opened up for me. All of a sudden, I could run a business. I could run for school board, things I never, ever thought I could do. So my challenge to you today is, number one, never spray Dow bathroom cleaner on your hair. And number two, think about your labels. Think about how you think about yourself and twist it. Find some way to stand on your baggage. You would be amazed at how far you can grow. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Margot. Who still has a thesaurus? Not just on your computer, like a paper one, right next to my desk. Love it. I know there's some people who don't even know what they are. It's a pity. I'm going to call for our timers report now. Jen?
Thank you, Nancy. Les came in today at 5:29, Nancy Rose at 4:10, and Margot Bittner at 6:05. So all three of our contestants today did qualify for time. Thank you.
Now you can cast your ballots for one of our three qualifying contestants. Online, you have a checkbox, and here we have a paper. I love it. Paper and thesaurus in the same meeting. Woohoo. There's a lot of reminiscing that we all do, and I'm thinking sometimes some of the nostalgic, reminiscing things that bring us joy, the same place and the same time that I was at my grandmother's, there was a little girl that lived next door, They had, this is New Hampshire, remind you, they had no floor. It was a dirt floor. There were very few windows that had glass in them. Their mom was a really heavy drinker and slept most of the time. The father was absent. She had 3 older sisters that had babies in their young teens and had moved in or out and back and forth. And my grandmother's house was a little bit of a refuge for her. And when I'm reminiscing about the fun things and how hard it was to use the potty thing out in the woodshed and taking a bath with 3 of us, it was only a weekend. It was only a weekend. And I think that when we think of sometimes the good old days when everything was wonderful and everything was happy, it wasn't always that way for everyone. And we need to remember that it's not always like that for everyone. And it's a wonderful, wonderful part of our brain that holds on to that holds on to some of those stories and allows us to change them a little as we need. As we grow older, we change them a little bit to fit what's going on, what we need it to say sometimes. I was also thinking about how our society sometimes is so complex and so complicated that we spend so much time learning how to relax, how to slow down, how to be mindful, how to enjoy things. There's workshops, there's articles, there's all kinds of things that we can do to learn how to be more, just let life be more simple for us. And I think that's a little bit of a sad commentary that we try to make things a little bit easier on ourselves and more simple when they're really just right there. As I'm going into retirement this next week or 2, probably 2, I have to give a 2-week notice. I haven't done that yet, so I'm thinking of some of the more simpler things that will be coming my way. Of course, not Social Security and things like that. That's always way too complicated for me to figure out, all the paperwork and everything, but not having to have as much of a schedule and have time with friends and some of the hobbies that I've collected. When I finally unpack, our home is being delivered tomorrow. So when I finally unpack all those treasures and fun things, I hope to have some time to do that. So I am going to ask our general evaluator to come up. Marty Johnston. And would you be kind enough to call on rolls and give us a rundown of the meeting?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster Nancy. At this point in time, we'd like to hear from the evaluators. We'll start with David Jones evaluating Les Robinson speech. David.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. And Les, thank you for your speech. I want to start with what you excelled at. And of course, I just learned when you spoke that you've been a Toastmaster for 15 years. Therefore, it was a little challenging for me to come up with some items. But you obviously were comfortable. That was the first thing I noticed. You were just sitting there talking to us as if it was one-on-one. It wasn't like you were talking to a group. I felt like you were speaking directly to me. I think they call that fire chat speeches or something like that they used to do on radio only, where you're just sitting there having a conversation. And you gave good researched information about public speaking. And for the first time, I think in history, you used Animal House as a reference to public speaking. I had never heard anybody give kudos to Animal House for a public speaking agenda, but you made it happen. For the basics, you had great vocal variety and your pace of your speech was very good. You paused where it was needed And before you started your speech and your glasses, I noticed you have a light behind your camera, and that's great because we can clearly see you very well. And that's an important part of being able to see your facial expressions while you're giving a speech on Zoom. You mentioned that accountants and lawyers can spend 5 hours on a 30-minute topic, and I can just think of billable hours. I think that's why they speak so much. Now, areas to work on. The only thing I noticed was your hand gestures. For the first half of your speech, you pretty much had none, but then once you got going in your speech, you started doing much more hand gestures. I don't know if you were uncomfortable or if maybe you just thought, hey, I need to start doing something and interacting. But again, for the first half, you were pretty much down with no hand gestures. And let me see. And that's really all I had was the hand gestures. Now to challenge yourself would be to engage the audience more. You had a kind of a technical, thought-provoking speech. And at the very beginning, you asked how many of you know Animal House, but you just moved on. I think with that, your type of speech, about halfway through, you should have stopped and asked a question or engaged people just to make sure they're paying attention, just to keep them engaged in your speech. And finally, the only other item that to challenge yourself, and it's a visual, more of a visual, is many speakers I know before their speeches, they're jumping up and clapping their hands and just getting all energized. And you're sitting there just very chill in your chair. I don't know, it's just a visual. Obviously, you got up and you gave a great speech and you're very comfortable giving speeches, but it's just a visual. I don't know if it is good or bad. It was just an observation. But thank you again for your speech, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, David. Next, I would like to hear from Jill Roaring, evaluating Nancy Rose icebreaker speech. Jill.
Well, good morning, everybody, and especially Nancy. Lifelong lessons learned from childhood. I think we can all probably say there's one or two things that our parents taught us that we remember. There's probably quite a few, in fact, most of us. Nancy listed 5 specifically in her confusion with one. She told a very engaging story and how it related to today's Nancy. I could only think about growing up with, as a family of 11 children, of the stories that my father is always telling about growing up with 7, as one of 7. And around the table, and how much it took somehow that our grandparents did this. And in fact, Nancy's parents. And they actually set a table for the extra person. Of course, when you're cooking for 13, the 14th is easy. Who knows that there's more? One thing I can say that, well, there's 2 things I saw that could be improved. One is not reading your speech, which I have a problem with that myself, so I shouldn't talk bad about that. But obviously you did. But it was a very engaging story, and you wanted to get it right. The other one is letting us see your expressions more. Now, I've noticed today that not very many of the people in here today are having to raise the microphone. Most of them are having to lower it. And Nancy, you were down here, along with all of our other height challenge people, which I don't comprehend. So maybe getting out in front of the lectern, coming out here. Then we could actually see your expressions. And that was my biggest things. Otherwise, it was a very well engaged speech. It kept us thinking. It was a delight to listen to. And we all found out that you were one of 11. So thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Jill. Next, Tracy Farrell, evaluating Margot Bittner's speech. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Marty. Margot did an excellent job. She started off right with her title of the speech. She came up here and it was standing on your baggage. That title alone made me, when I read it last night, I was like, I want to hear this speech. This is going to be interesting. So she reminisced about her having children and the difficulties of trying to do something while you have children running around. So that kind of engaged most of our audience because we remember those days. She did something else. She stood in front of the lectern. She had no notes, which she never does, but that's also a way to engage and inspire your audience. She talked about some of her problems that she was going through, and you have kids, but you're trying to do something else. So that kind of made us think, okay, I can relate to this. And she's a DTM, so she had very little need for improvement. One of the things I probably would have done is when she first started, she was speaking really fast. And these stories, I could relate to them, but it went in too quick. If you just pause, maybe just a tiny bit more, I could have absorbed it a lot better. And I'm sitting back when she was in front, and I didn't even think about this till afterwards. I'm not too sure if she had the microphone or not. So I'm not, did you? Okay, sorry. Scratch that note off. But slowing down, letting us absorb those. Towards the end of the speech, you were a lot better in that. And I would also, you had a great ending with it and a call to action that was humorous, meaning we are talking about don't style your hair with bathroom cleaning products and stuff. And she also said, turn those negatives into positives. I think she also could have said, step up on top of your baggage, stand tall and inspire your audience. So take that baggage that you have, move forward with it, own it, and inspire your audience. Like always, Margot does a fantastic job speaking. She inspires us all, and I hope we're all as good of a speaker as she is someday. Thank you very much, Margot, and thank you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Thank you to our evaluators and our speakers this morning. At this point in time, call for a timers report for our evaluators. Jen, good morning.
Thank you, Marty. Yes, I'm one of the short people bringing the mic down today. All three of our evaluators did qualify on timing, coming right into the center. They hit the target right on the money. David at 241, Jill at 235, and Tracy at exactly 230. So Tracy's got the bullseye today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. As Jen said, you can vote for either any of the three evaluators, David Jones, Jill, or Tracy. And Michael will be collecting our ballots. Thank you, Michael. At this point, I will evaluate the Toastmaster and the evaluators, and then I will call for the reports. I was pleasantly surprised, not only this morning, but last week as well. I don't know if that door locks at 7 o'clock or there's a glitch with the door. Does anyone know? Because last week I was a few minutes to 7 and it was locked. And I had to get buzzed in. So today I was surprised that Tracy and I walked up and happened to pull in at the same time. And I tried to buzz in, and last week I was able to buzz in, but today I wasn't. Buzzed in up at the front desk and walk through. I guess that means that I'll have to get here a little earlier next time because none of you had problems getting in. So that's what I'll do. Well, moving on to our meeting this morning, Nancy, very well-run meeting, very organized. And I know that you had sent requests out for people to confirm, And excuse me, I must admit that I honestly thought that I usually try to confirm my roles out as far as they're listed on the agenda, and I thought I did that. For whatever reason, I didn't. So thank you for sending the reminder out. I did get your email. I believe it was yesterday morning or early yesterday afternoon, and I confirmed then. I apologize for keeping you waiting in that regard for my role. And just looking at my checklist, we did start on time. You filled in a couple roles this morning or in the absence of a couple members. I liked your filler information and the theme. It was something unique. And you told some personal stories, and there are a lot of vivid. I'd like to hear stories that are vivid, and you use some good imagery. It was very interesting. And it's funny that you talk about reminiscing, because last night my sisters were visiting. One of my sisters came in from Colorado, and a couple of my sisters were in town from Rochester, and they're reminiscing because it was my mother and father's 65th wedding anniversary yesterday. And make a long story short, my mom is, just so you all know, my mom is in Mount St. Mary's Hospital right now, and we're trying to get her into hospice care. And it looks like it's going in that direction, but it was a beautiful evening. I had to work, however, it was beautiful to listen to my sisters reminisce. My one sister had some music that my parents would listen to, remembering back when, like your theme, and they had it in my mom's hospital room, and her face just lit up when it was music that my mom and dad used to listen to. So it was a very beautiful evening, remembering when things were probably much simpler than they are today. So I enjoyed your theme. You had a wonderful meeting. Back to our evaluators, David Jones. I noticed that you used a sandwich approach, David, when you're talking to Lester. And I agree that when Les speaks from where he was sitting, it was definitely reminded me of a fireside chat also. It was very, very interesting. You gave him something to work on, to use his hand gestures throughout the speech, continuous, and to how to engage the audience with a visual aid. That was a great idea. Perhaps something from his professional life or from his Toastmaster career that has helped him with his communication style. Good job, David. Moving into Jill's speech on our most important day, listening to Nancy Rose's icebreaker speech. And Nancy, just so you know, when we have a new member, and I noticed your face lit up when you saw everyone applauding you. We normally love to hear a new member speech and new ideas and introduce someone to the club. That's why we're all standing. It's our tradition at AM Lockport to stand and applaud the members. Jill gave Nancy some good tips. And Nancy, one of the things that Jill mentioned is to stand out. And over time, you'll feel more comfortable, but I would recommend, and I think you've done it before when you're talking in table topics, that's what we call practice for stage time. When you're actually presenting your speech, come out whenever you have a role. It's hard with this mic, but ideally you come out and practice that when you have a meeting role. So in some situations it's easier, but with our mic setup, it's a little harder. Whenever you get a chance, I would definitely recommend coming out to speak. And over time, you'll feel more comfortable doing that. Overall, Jill, a great example of sandwich approach and a great evaluation for Nancy on her icebreaker. Tracy evaluating Margot's speech. I liked how you picked up on Margot, how she engaged the audience with the story. A couple very wonderful stories, interesting stories, and I want to have a speech, Margot, someday about what you talked about with the hairspray and the things that when you're in the medicine cabinet and or in the bathroom closet or in your cabinet and you grab the wrong thing to use. I can think of many examples, and someday I am definitely going to give probably a humorous speech about that. And I'll try to do the hairspray. Tracy gave Margot something to work on throughout the speech with a consistent rate of speech, and commented on her good use of the call to action at the end of the speech. All three Toastmasters used the sandwich approach today, which was very appropriate. At this point, I'm going to call for reports. I'm going to start with the master. And we have filling in is the master. We have an master today. Someone had filled in. Was it, did Beth fill in or Jackie? Grammarian? Okay, I'll call on Jackie for the grammarian. Jackie.
Good
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. Everyone was very well behaved today, so I don't have a lot of negativity to share with you. Although I did hear Les say very extremely well, and I know he can do better than that. I liked Nancy Ferry saying to Carol when she was giving the word of the day that she would transcribe it rather than just write it on the board. And also, you used the term nostalgia, which is perfect with reminisce. Marty greeted everyone present and on Zoom this morning. It's kind of nice to greet the audience as you're introducing whatever your topic is. Margot, I liked labels you've been given or given yourself. That's very thought-provoking because I think we tend to do that to ourselves. And standing on your baggage. That's a great visual to think about. How often do we stand on the baggage that we have and carry along with us? Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jackie. Next, our tech and gesture master. Our tech and gesture master today, let's see here, is Beth Banks. Beth.
I have to go way down compared to Marty. I have to say first, our tech is always impressive. I don't know what we would do without you, Len. You just put it together. It just happens. I would not be able to do that. Even when it appeared there was a lost connection one time. Of course, it was while you were up here. You couldn't do anything about it, but it happens. A lot of really good facial expressions today. Some hands, of course, I talk with my hands. I can't really help it. My DNA shows I don't have any Italian, but something, yes. I know, it's weird, huh? I did notice a few things. Len, you couldn't really talk with your hands because your hands were in your pockets. I would say that's probably a natural thing for you to do. Of course, it's hard to be on Zoom and have good expressions, but Phil Russell, your facial expressions are always good. Les, I noticed today that I believe your last speech, you sat back and your evaluator asked you to sit forward and you listened. You did that today. That was very good. I also did notice that the hand gestures improved as you went along. Nancy, good icebreaker, but a few things, use your hands more, a little more. I think in bringing your laptop here, I never even thought of that. It's a good idea, but it did perhaps make you a little too dependent on that because you had it up here. Maybe not. Of course, Margot, come in front. That's perfect. You always know that. Great expressions, hand and facial, whichever, it works. So think that's, Tracy, I loved the when you said she had to stand up, that you actually did stand up. That was cute. I like that. In terms of reminiscing, I think you're right. There are times when we reminisce and we try to look at the positive, but there are also negative memories that we have. One of my positive, I don't know if kids do this anymore, but we built a fort. It's way out back, great fort. Someone had a bunch of trees and limbs and whatever, so we dug a little hole in there and we made a fort. That was a good memory. But I also do have a memory of losing two neighbor ladies when I was very young. I mean, we moved from that neighborhood when I was 12, so obviously they had passed away before that. But those are memories that do stick with you. And you have to, I guess, get by those bad memories. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Beth. Our quiz master, Mike Florio. Mike, how well were we listening this morning as we reminisce?
Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters. Now, Nancy Ferry reminisced about a mill town. Where was that mill town? New Hampshire. Right. And what did they make at that mill town? Toilet paper. In the recycling business, toilet paper smells like money. Whew. All right. Dave Licata reminisced about a penny candy store. Can you tell me at what corner was that penny store?
Allen and Monroe.
Monroe, yes. I think the other street was Hannigan.
Hannigan's was the name of the store. I live right there. I know.
All right. Okay. I've
Monroe
already
and
had
Allen.
inside information. Okay, good. Steve Smith built this in his backyard, and they will come.
Baseball field.
Baseball field, build it and they will come. I don't know, did that help you,
It
Gerald?
did.
What year was Len born or graduated from high school?
1980.
1980, yes. Okay, and what does he coach? Football. And do they ever call him back?
Never.
No, they don't. I agree with you about tech. Let's see, Phil, what was the easiest going decade for Phil?
50s.
The 50s. Thanks, Mark. Les, what were the 4 communication styles that Les talked about? I can't hear, I'm sorry.
Analytical.
That's one. Analytical. Supportive was another. And he wanted you to be very, very direct and initiating was the 4th. Now, Nancy Rose was which one out of 11 kids?
10.
10th, yes. 14 chairs, 11 kids, 13 in the house. And she had 5 rules too, though. What were her 5 rules?
Respectful, be respectful.
respectful, loving,
If you can't say anything good, don't say it, right?
appreciative, and if you have nothing nice to say, don't say it. Margot, let's see, with Margot, what was her challenge to everyone?
Stand on your baggage, turn it around, make it positive.
No. No. Labels. Think about the way people and you label yourself. I thought that was very significant. And that's all I have for today. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Mike. Just a note, a side note, we only have a few minutes. We're gonna try to wrap up the meeting and end on time. And our word master, I'd like to hear from Carol Ann. How did we do with the word reminisce today? And then I will call Nancy up and she can close the meeting and hand out the awards.
Our word did very well. As was mentioned before, all the table topics used it. Dave Licata used it in a couple forms. Mike Florio, Marty, Mark Campus, Les Robinson used it a couple times, and Dave Jones, Nancy Rose, Jill, Margot, Tracy, and Beth, and our leader of the meeting, the Toastmaster, Nancy, she used it several times, so it did well.
Thank you, Carol. Please help me welcome back up to the lectern, our Toastmaster of the day, Nancy Ferry.
Marty, we have some winners here. These are, do you have ribbons or just one? Okay. Let's congratulate Steve Smith for best table topics. He sends a high five. Our best evaluator, Tracy Farrell. She left the house. And our best speaker for the day, Nancy Rose. Nancy, would you like to come up and? No, wait, we have really big bucks here, so the stakes are high.
Well, I
Drum
just want
roll.
to say stakes were high for me because I was sandwiched between those two excellent speakers. So thank you very much. And the winner is 345,425.
Jackie Kinney. Half a cup of coffee at Starbucks? Plus cream? Great meeting, and the meeting is adjourned.
Right now. Right now, my mom's from St. Mary's. And we had, she initially didn't qualify as